Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the hashtag Slinkythink sessions, or as Chris likes to say, the # Slinkythink sessions, if you're old school and know what the heck a # is. So welcome to today's webinar. As I mentioned in emails earlier, that this will be an interactive session, but we're just going to do all that via chat. So feel free, if you do have any questions or comments or anything, feel free to hit us up via the chat function within Zoom. Also, everything, it looks like we have a box in the middle of the screen. So let's figure that out. I'll have my better half figure out why there's this. Oh, there we go. Cool. All right, we fixed that. Thanks for your input, Tom. All right, so what are we going to be covering today? Management 3.0. It's a pretty powerful concept. It's the idea that leaders, managers should change systems to better empower leaders themselves, that you should be managing systems, not people, and that you should allow people to be empowered to do their best work, to therefore create incredible results via the power of the collective team. So let's see here. Sorry, I'm stuck on the first slide. A little technical difficulty here. Just enjoy this beautiful first slide while it's... Okay, great. So let's hop into the agenda. So we're going to be introducing ourselves, also an introduction of who we are as an organization, beLithe. But then we're going to talk about what is Management 3.0 just a little bit. Section 2, we're going to talk about management itself. How should we define management? What management truly is? Some of the motivations behind the leaders within organizations. And then the third section, we're going to talk about, well, basically what you came here for. Chris and I are not big proponents of just talking about ways that you can empower your team without really giving you a specific skill set moving forward, or some takeaways that you can use to empower your team right away. So that's going to be great. And then we'll just wrap up. And if you all have any questions, feel free to let us know moving forward. So beLithe. Lithe, if you've never heard this word, is an adjective, and its definition is to be agile, flexible, or transparent. So our slogan as an organization is beLithe, meaning be agile. So you notice that our tagline, people, culture, agile, the big thing for us is people always come first. And speaking of people, now the reason why people come first is because we understand that to transform organizational culture, you have to start with people. And let me go ahead and introduce the team behind today's webinar. So Chris Daly is going to be the one who's going to be leading you through today's workshop. He's worked in numerous organizations via Agile. And then yours truly, Drew Kinchis. I've done a lot of work in remote team work with different entrepreneurs, small businesses, really involved in the startup community here in Indianapolis. And lastly, Slinkythink. So we love this hashtag or #, as I mentioned before. What the heck is Slinkythink? Well, when we came up with this term, we wanted it to be a fun way for us to describe our agile mindset as an organization. But the longer and longer that we've been using this hashtag, we find it to be really fun that people are actually sharing their stories about what agile means to them. And so #Slinkythink is not just a reflection of us as an organization, but everyone that we associate with, all these people who are directly affected by the power of thinking in an agile sort of way. All right, so without further ado, I am going to kick it over to Chris Daly to get this show on the road.
Can you hear me? Yep. Okay. Hello, everybody. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk today about this concept called Management 3.0. And Management 3.0 is really something that I think is unique. You know, as I've come up and worked over the years, it's always amazed me how we focus on the technical skills and how we get people ready to do certain things, right? We train to be software developers, we train to be marketing folks and accounting folks, and we don't seem to take the time to train our managers. And so what I really find about Management 3.0 that's appealing is as we go forward in a new way of managing, as we go forward, the way we manage has changed dramatically over the years. And so I really like the Management 3.0 concept. You can go to management3.0.com. It's actually management30.com. And you can go out there and you can see what Management 3.0 is about. It comes from a guy by the name of Jurgen Appelo, who wrote a book called Management 3.0. And then from that started a movement where people are actually going to go through and they're actually going to figure out how they manage and manage differently. This thing's not moving. Sorry. So what is it when we talk about managing? What is that actually? And when we talk about managing, this is straight from Merriam-Webster. And what this definition to me is really appealing because it talks about handling or directing with a degree of skill, to make and keep, to treat with care, to exercise authority, which is kind of an interesting concept, especially in this day and age. As knowledge workers, thought workers, right? We all don't want to be told what to do and exactly how to do it, but yet our management models still follow that, very much so. So where does Management 3.0 come from? Well, the first management was really Management 1.0. And this was the management model that really came out of the Industrial Revolution. It came out of the fact that we are going to go and, we're all replaceable. You go back to Henry Ford and what Henry Ford did about where we're going to do the assembly line, and we're actually going to sit down and we're going to be, if I'm working on an assembly line, I'm going to put a part on the car. And then as the car moves on down, I'm going to put another part on the car. And so let me get rid of that box there that's there. There we go. Is that better? So, it's really about, and when we talk about Management 3.0 or Management 1.0, we're really talking about can a manager, they need to monitor everything that's going on. They need to be controlling, and anything that's wrong, the manager's going to fix it. The manager's going to be the one that comes in and does it. And so it leads to that model where, people are viewed as parts. They're viewed as resources. We're viewed as replaceable. If we need another developer, we need another tester, we need a marketing person, we can just hire another one, right? And they can jump right in and whatever work we thought we were going to do, we just add them and they'll pick it right up. And it doesn't work that way. And as I said, this really comes from that manufacturing concept that what Henry Ford started and that Frederick Taylor memorialized, right, in Taylorism. It's really this scientific management approach. And it was really successful in the early part of the 20th century where we're producing, where all we're doing is manufacturing. We're not really having to think about what we do. We have some smart engineers that come up with a new idea or a concept, figure out how to do the work, and then reduce it down to a point where anybody can do it. And because anybody can do it, that means it's cheap. We don't have to pay as much. We don't need specialized skills. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to go to vocational school or have any specific training. You can just do it. And so what kind of examples can you think of that are Management 1.0? If you would, put them in the chat. Let's see what let's see what you can come up with, right? They're out there, and this kind of management is still prevalent today in management and in what we're doing. Okay, so we'll give you a second to do that. If you were eating, we'll give you a second to get to your keyboards and key that in. So let's move on and talk about Management 2.0, right? So what's Management 2.0? In Management 2.0, we start to recognize that people are valuable assets, human resources. This is where HR is really starting to come along and understand that, you know, we need to treat people, we can't just treat people as though they're a cog in the machine, right? We really need to treat them as though they are, you know, as they're valuable assets. And we do things, you know, where we come out, and this is where you really kind of see the movement specifically in some companies, where they go to ping pong tables, foosball tables, company outings, right? We act like we care. You know, we're going to go through the motions of doing that. We're going to, as a corporation, we recognize that we have to do something different. We start to recognize the fact that if people leave and quit, that it's problematic for us. But yet our managers still, we haven't taken our managers and trained them on what we should do, you know, on a different way of doing stuff. We haven't trained them on how to go and do things in such a way that they can work in that kind of environment. And a lot of that has to do with trust. A lot of that has to do with security. People don't understand that they can't, you know, managers don't understand that, hey, you're not going to need me anymore if you're self-empowered, you know, if we're empowering people. And so they still stick to their hierarchies. We still stick to our control mechanisms that we think are going to make us successful. And this is really where we start to struggle when it comes to organizations that want to be agile, right, or want to move to a different way of doing business. Their hierarchies are still there. Their organizational structures are still there. Think about your accounting systems and your budgets, where you have a budget that's a year-long cycle and you can't change it. And then think about your tradition, you know, how we compensate people, right? That's all done on a year-long basis. And so we really have to change the way managers do how they view their work and how they view their role. So are there examples you can think of that are Management 2.0? Right? I can think of organizations I've worked in where it was very hierarchical, where it was very they did a good job of acting like they cared, but yet in reality they didn't, right? You still had the management structures in place. You still had the performance evaluations that were in place. So when we think about Management 3.0, what's different about it is this is geared toward more of the agile way of doing business, right? When we're doing an agile transformation or a new way of doing business, more of that lean startup approach. We think of Management 3.0 as a way of, you know, building a community, right? You build a group of people that work together, and as working together, they all contribute. They all have their own special skills. They all have their own special things that they bring to the table or bring to the community. And so that's the way we want to think about Management 3.0. It's less about trying to control everything, but more about how do we create an environment that we allow people to foster and do it for everybody to benefit as long as they're getting along. The job of management, I like this quote, the job of management is to design and run systems that support the company in achieving its purpose. It's a big difference when you think about Management 3.0. We're not going to, our managers are not under the false illusion that they control anything. We understand that we don't control. So we start on focusing on building an environment or a culture or a system that allows us to be able to grow our company. And this is what happens a lot when you think about, when you see small to medium-sized companies as they grow, and pretty soon the founders go away, right? The founders leave the organization. They struggle with the fact that they don't have the same authority. They don't have the same control. So how, as a founder of a company or a leader in a small to medium-sized company, how do you scale that company? How do you scale your management skills so that you can go forward and allow the company to prosper without you having to make all the decisions, without you having to be engaged in everything that goes on? And the author of 3.0, Management 3.0, is Jurgen Appelo. And Jurgen says that management is too important to leave to managers. It's kind of an interesting quote when you think about it. It's too important just to leave it to managers. And what the follow-up to that is that we all should be managing. We all should be contributing. We all should be working together and not just leave it for managers to tell everybody what to do. So what examples do you know of from a Management 3.0 standpoint? Do you see any examples? You know, a lot of them, the ones that pop to mind are companies like Zappos, like Facebook. On the chat, we've got, if everybody's looking at the chat, process documentation for Management 1.0, right? Check the quality sheets, quality sign-offs. Andrew Hughes is talking about his 3-year-old and 5-year-old sweeping the living room right now. Yes, with kids, we talk about 1.0. You know, that's pretty much 1.0. You start out there. And that's a good analogy, right? You start out with 1.0 with your kids. You tell them exactly what to do. As you go forward, you begin to start treating them like they're an adult. And by the time they become adults, hopefully you do that. Let's see what else we got. So yeah, so waterfall, right, would be one. A traditional project management shop would be one. Another one that you might think of as Management 2.0. So how do we go forward in an environment where we want to change and do things differently? So Management 3.0 is not just another framework. It's more of a mindset. And I was doing a class yesterday, an Agile overview class for one of my clients. And we were talking about the fact that Agile is a mindset. Management 3.0 is a mindset as well, right? It's not just a, hey, here's the rules and here's how this works. Here's the techniques you use. Here's the process you use. It's really about a different mindset. It's getting to that point where we're going to be intentional about what we're doing, where we're going to go off and we're going to understand that everybody's different. We're not just all cogs in the machine. We all have different needs and we all have different wants and we all have different desires. And how we as managers meet those wants and needs and desires is what's absolutely critical. And the only way you can do that is to create and have it scale it all is create a system where it's okay for that to happen, where it's okay to treat people as individuals and meet them where they're at, as opposed to trying to get everybody on the same page. See what else. You know, to do that, so when you go out and look at the Management 3.0 site, or if you come and attend one of our classes, you'll find that we spend a lot of time talking about games. We spend a lot of time talking about different techniques that you can use to try and get people to engage, right? To start opening up and collaborating. And that's really what management's about when you think about it. It's really about, how do I collaborate? How do I, as a servant leader or a facilitative leader, how do I get my teammates to engage? And so when we talk about Management 3.0, we talk about things like complexity thinking. We talk about management and leadership. We talk about engagement, motivation, success. We talk about how do you scale it. And those kind of concepts are important. And we don't talk about that enough. We just purely tend to talk about things like, here's how you do your performance review. Have a one-on-one with every employee once a week, right? Do this, do that. And that kind of approach doesn't always work. And it's a bit of a struggle for managers, because fundamentally, we as leaders aren't doing anything to help our managers. We don't give them any education. We give them very little education. We tell them to go out and look it up on the internet. And, you know, as you know, on the internet, you can always find somebody that's got an opposite opinion of what you want. And so it's very problematic. It can be very hard for managers to try and figure it out. So we're going to dive into a couple of modules here, a couple of topics that are key for Management 3.0. And the first one's really engagement. So when you engage people, we're trying to get them energized. We're trying to get them to be part of the organization. We want people to be active and creative and motivated. When they're motivated, when they're active, and when they're creative, we get their best. So if we're a greedy, money-grubbing business guy, it's in our own best interest to get our people engaged. It's in our own best interest to get them energized, because we don't have to prod them along. We don't have to keep trying to drag people along with us. They actually will carry us forward. So think about it a minute. When was the last time you enjoyed your work? Why did you enjoy it? Right? If you could answer that on the chat, what's an enjoyable situation you've had? Give you a second here to reply on the chat. So here's the next question. How do we get people engaged, right? We're having that challenge right now in the webinar. How do we get you engaged in the chat, right? How do you do that? Do you buy foosball tables? Do you buy ping pong tables? Do you have beer? Do you have company outings? What do you do to get people engaged? And how do we improve that? That's what we're going to talk about a little bit. So business leaders and human resource managers, they get it, or they think they get it. They consider that their top priority, and they want to do that. But yet, even with their best of intentions, people still don't feel engaged. You know, in fact, there are apps out there, there are SaaS products out there like Amplify that try to identify if people are engaged and why they're not engaged. There are apps out there that try and increase employee engagement. Apps like Ohana, for example, or Requiem have capabilities built within them so that we can figure out, are people engaged or not in what they're doing. And it kind of, with all the apps and with all the intelligence we've got, and the focus by HR and our business leaders, why are we still lacking engagement? And a lot of it is that we rely on our managers to be responsible for engagement. It's a built-in, and the way we engage is built in to the culture of the organization. It's the way we do business. It's the way we do things here. And it doesn't always work. So, you know, and when we think about engagement, we think about it being intrinsic versus extrinsic. So if those of you that have read, might have read Daniel Pink's book. Daniel Pink talks about mastery, autonomy, and purpose as being the three key indicators of how you get engaged. With Management 3.0, we have a model that we call Champ Frogs that we use that breaks it down even further into more granular ways of figuring out whether somebody's going to be engaged or not. And the goal of every organization is to engage people for productivity. We want them to be better. We want them engaged so they're not just punching the time clock. so that they're stopping. If they see a problem, they're raising their hand and saying, I see a problem, let's fix this, as opposed to letting that problem just go on down and actually get out into the wild, get out in and let bad quality work get out into the public. So we want to try and get people engaged from that standpoint. And the organization needs to create a system that does that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about motivation. So I mentioned the champ frog model, right? So the champ frog model deals specifically with the motivation in the construct of a work life. How are we engaging people in their work? The champ frog models comes up with, it's got 10 motivators to it, and some of them are intrinsic, some of them are extrinsic, right? Intrinsic being self-motivated. I'm doing it for the purpose. I'm doing it for internally because I feel good about it or because it's the right thing to do. Extrinsic being I'm doing it for money. Champ frog models uses a combination of both. So the first one's curiosity. Are you curious? Do we create an environment where it's okay for people to be curious and for them to explore and to learn? Do we have honor? Do we recognize achievements when people accomplish that? Are we the type of organization that values honor, right, and does the right thing? Acceptance. We want to be accepted. We want, in spite of what we, sometimes hear about rebels and about people rebelling, most of us want to be accepted by our group, whatever that group might be. Whether it might be as a millennial, whether it's as a Gen Xer or whatever, right? As a leader in the company, maybe it's a member. We want to be accepted as being a member of our marketing team or QA team. We want to be accepted by everybody. We don't want to be an outcast. We want to be part of that group. Mastery. This one I think is one that I think is probably the easiest one to solve. Right? So how do we become masters? How do we set up an environment where our folks that we work with can be masters at what they do? Whether it's through education, whether it's through mentoring and coaching, or whether it's through internal or external training. We can help them do that. We can help them become masters at what they do. They can become better at what they do. And if people feel like they're improving and their skills are getting better, and they're getting more experiences that are good for them, they will hang around. Software developers, in my experiences, aren't really focused on what it is they're doing right now. They're focused on what the next thing is. Am I going to get the latest and greatest skill set? Am I going to have an opportunity to work on with the cool new technology? Or am I going to be stuck on this old technology that nobody wants to use? That's a challenge in some organizations, right? Some organizations, one of my clients right now I'm working with has got COBOL, right? And their technology is 1970s, 1980s in terms of most of what they do. It's a bit of a problem trying to get that mastery portion of this taken care of because you're dealing with an old technology. Power. Do they have the ability to do things? Do they have the power to make changes? Do we trust them in what they're doing, or are we taking away all their power and all their authority? Freedom. Do they have the freedom to go do what they want to go do? Do they have the opportunity to do their work in the way that they feel comfortable? Still meets our needs, still meets our goals, and is accepted in our quality metrics. But do we have to tell them everything to do, or do we allow them to figure out how best to do the work? Relatedness. So it needs to be related to whatever they're doing, needs to be related to what the organization is doing. It needs to be related to other functions within that group so that they can feel that they're a part of it, that there's that acceptance there. Order. So is it ordered, or is it order in terms of how we're going as an organization, or is it chaos, right? Are we whipsawed around, jumping from one thing to the other, or are we following, does it appear we're following the steps toward the next thing, which is a goal, right? So what is the goal of what the organization is trying to do? Is that clear and apparent to us? Do we have a goal for ourselves in what we're trying to do? And then the last thing is status, right? Do I have the status within the organization that people recognize me for what I'm capable of? Does the company I work for have the status? Is it a company that everybody is wanting to work for because of the accomplishments it's making, or is it a company that nobody wants to work for? So those are that's the Champ Frogs model that is part of Management 3.0. It's an interesting way to break it down, because when you think about it, we all have priorities within this model, right? If there are 10 attributes, there are 10 different things that we could prioritize. Some of us would prioritize. Some of us might prioritize curiosity, right? We want to always be working on something new. Others of us might want to feel more accepted, right? Or might want to be in a position where we value mastery. And because we each have our own way of looking at it, our own way of what motivates us, having these 10 components that we're trying to figure out allows us to be somewhat different. And it would be tough if everybody was motivated by curiosity, or if everybody was motivated by freedom, and if that was their most motivating factor. You know, that could be a problem. If everybody's motivated by mastery, that could be a problem too, right? Everybody wanting the same thing, it makes it very difficult. So because we're all unique individuals at unique spots in our lives with unique experiences, again, we all have a different way of looking at this. We all have a different approach to this. So as a manager, you must figure out what the priority is of each individual. So as a manager, how do I figure out, if I'm talking about Drew, what is it that motivates Drew? What is it that's going to get him excited and engaged in this company that he and I have got? What about, you know, if we're talking about a large corporation, what is it that we're motivated by? If we're in a large corporation, it may very well be, if I go back to this, it may be that we're not so big on freedom, we're more interested in order, right? We want to, you know, a company like, and I'll pick on them, a company like Lilly, right? There's parts of Eli Lilly where people want order. They want to be able to go in, and they want to be able, they want to know that every day I'm going to come in and I know exactly what it is I'm going to do. There are parts, you know, and that's what is really you know, people that are motivated by that tend to be more of the traditional project management type, right? We want the order. We want to know exactly what we're going to do. We want to know what the plan is. So how do you, as a manager, again, how do you figure that out? Well, one of the things that we did was that Drew just uploaded in the chat a link to our Champ Frogs model that we took out of Management 3.0 and we put it in a PDF for you. Management 3.0 itself has some downloadable cards that you can download and you can print out, you can cut them out. It's free on the site, and you can go in and you can actually, once you actually get the cards cut out, you can sit down and you put them in order, right? Of highest, you know, what motivates me from left to right, with the highest being on the left, the lowest being on the right. If you take those cards and do that with a group of people and have each one do it, you can suddenly start seeing what motivates each individual. You as a manager could use a tool like that to go out and have a conversation with the folks you work with, right? Your teammates, on what is it that motivates you. Drew did, as I mentioned, Drew downloaded a PDF that we created so that you could see what it looks like online. And you could go through and print it out. You could go through and, for example, rank yours. And so I'm curious, if you could in the chat, what's your priority? We're going to take a couple minutes and ask each of you to go in on the chat and upload what are your top 2 or 3 priorities, right? And you can list them, you know, you can list them as, just use the letters, or you could use or you can type out the words. But let's just give you a few minutes to do that. In the future, it'd help if we had that one up so I can see the chat. yourself. What are you seeing?
All right, so it looks like, hey everybody, this is Drew. Some really great answers here. Honor, freedom, and curiosity from Carlos. Curiosity and goal from Andrew. Mastery and freedom from TKO. Freedom, mastery from Tom. Yeah, it looks like mastery is definitely one of these intrinsic motivators that we're seeing consistently. So thanks everybody for that input.
So the question now is, what about the people you work with? What are they motivated by? What drives them, right? And as an organization, what's your organization about? Because organizations tend to attract people that are interested in the same kind of thing, right? As an organization, if we're interested in being curious and exploring, we're going to tend to attract more people like that. If we're interested in just staying the course, right? And we're interested in order and not upsetting the apple cart, right? You're going to attract people like that. That's where people are going to gravitate to. What's your organization like? What motivators have you built into your systems to attract those people, right? What are the things you've brought in? Whether it's, we've got an advanced education program. Maybe it's we talk about job security, right? So we create things like pension funds or 401ks that attract people, or is it we've got risk takers out there, right, that are interested. So we create a lot of stock options and things like that. So organizations will build those motivators in. And think about your own company and where you work. If you've worked there for very long, how do you feel about what their motivators are? Are they for you? So we've done that. A lot of time we spend trying to figure out how to motivate individuals. So how do we motivate this one key individual for our team? And that can cause a lot of problems, right? So if we're doing something and we've got somebody we feel like is irreplaceable, so we come back with some large bonus or some large promotion and give them a title so that they stay motivated, right? What impact does that have on the rest of the folks that are around? They figure it out. They know what's happening. So it can be very detrimental. It can be it can be destructive to your organization. So rather than focusing on an individual employee, focus on creating a system that matches back and that motivates your employees and your teammates. And this next slide says basically that. Manage the system. Quit managing the people, right? Create the environment where the folks can prosper, right? And then get out of the way and let them do that. You can't make people feel motivated, right? I've worked in organizations where we were under the gun, we were being acquired, and we knew we were being acquired. We knew they were shopping us around. People were not motivated. They didn't believe, they didn't know if they were going to be safe. Were they going to have a job in 6 months? And it was really hard. You can't make people feel motivated. You can't drag them, you can't drag them forward and say, thou shalt be motivated. It doesn't work that way. You've got to set up the right conditions for them to be motivated. And you as leaders have to embrace that. You have to walk the talk. You can't have motivators. You can't be motivated extrinsically as a leader and yet expect everybody else is just going to be happy with intrinsic motivation. You've got to make sure that you're aligning with that you as leadership are aligning with the systems you're setting up for your organizations. And that's the end of that's all that we have right now. So I want to wrap up by saying, you know, again, the Management 3.0 is really a framework, right? It's really a mindset and a framework where you can go out and you can actually learn how, get some tools and get some exposure to different ways, different things you can do to manage better. We want to, you know, again, you want to have your folks motivated and engaged. If you go out to the Management 3.0 site, there is a ton of free information out there. The Moving Motivators game is out there. There's also, they also talk about things like personal maps. They also talk about delegation poker, and they talk about, there's a lot of other concepts that are out there. And most of it's free. It's really a good resource. I'd encourage you to read the book. I'd encourage you to also read Jurgen's book, Managing for Happiness. That's got a number of great exercises, a number of great stories that'll help you as you go forward. You're not going to become a great manager or a great leader just by trying to figure it out on your own, butting your head against the wall. This is it's a great, that website and these books are great resources. And of course, if you want to see it in practice, you want to jumpstart on it, of course you can come and attend one of our couple-day sessions. We're also going to have some more webinars a little bit soon here in the future, where we're going to dig into some more of these topics, right? Around how do you manage better? How do you lead better? How do you get your folks engaged? Mr. Drew, is there, oh, you're muted? Okay. Let me unmute him.
All right, thanks everybody for attending today's session. We apologize about some of the technical difficulties, but just like us presenting these webinars, we are a small business and we are constantly being iterative and figuring things out. So thank you for your patience on all that. I hope you got a lot of really great advice moving forward regarding how you can empower your teams. As Chris mentioned, I sent a link in the chat, or I dropped a link in the chat that has a downloadable PDF and also a JPEG that has all of those different intrinsic motivators listed. And I'd suggest to take that and print that out and then go through that with your teams and see, have them number, go through 1 through 10, with number 1 being their top motivator, and have everyone write that out and then just decompress that. And that's really going to help you to see moving forward where some of the motivations lie within your teams. And I think you'll find some interesting commonality amongst some of your teammates as well from doing that really simple activity. So you're going to receive an email from yours truly here pretty soon, which is going to have a few things. One is it's going to have the video slides and also the slides from today's presentation. So you can use that as you so desire for future reference. I'm also going to send the link again for the 1-pager freebie in case for some reason you're not seeing it in the chat or you can't get it to work. I'll make sure to send that as well. You're also going to receive a discount code to get 20% off any of our upcoming Management 3.0 courses, as Chris mentioned. We have a couple of different features, or a couple of different ways that we're presenting Management 3.0. We have the traditional 2-day course, and we have a course set up in May, June, and July with a 2-day course back to back to cover everything. But we're also super excited because we have just released an online version. So that is set up where it's 2 hours a week, every week for 8 weeks. And so if taking out 2 full days of work just isn't doable, you can go with the online version, which is pretty fun. So if you're just really into eating while attending these webinars, as you probably did today, then the online version of Management 3.0 will allow you to do that as well. So Last thing I'll mention in that message, I'm going to send you in just a little bit, is the date for our next, the hashtag Slinkythink sessions. And that session, we're going to be covering Kanban. Some of you might know what Kanban is, and how Kanban can help empower remote teams. And so I'm going to be leading that workshop specifically, and how we can, not only what the idea of Kanban is, but how do we manifest it, and how do we use technology to be our friend, to be able to not only get more work done, be accountable, but see the work happening. And so we can see where there's blockers and different, you know, just to see the flow of work, what's working, what isn't working. And so we can stop deciding our next steps on hunches, and we can start using more data, which I think is always really good. So I'll be sending that message out to you in just a little bit. If you'd like to follow us on social media, we are at beLithe LLC. And that's going to do it for this edition of the hashtag Slinkythink sessions. Once again, thanks for attending today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay agile, and we will talk to you soon.